Hi, everybody. It's Kira. I'm here doing my book talk, and it's Thursday, I think. Yeah, Thursday afternoon, and you should be finished with school, which is started doing everything at 4, so that you're not supposed to be in Zoom school. I don't know why I just called it that. I'm just going to straighten this angle a little bit. Okay. So yeah, I'm actually going to give a book talk about a book that we don't have yet in the library. It is on order, so it should be here soon, and you should keep your eyes out for it because I love this book. I love it so much that I bought it. Now, yes, librarians in general, now this is a stereotype, we love books, we have absurd personal libraries, all of that, yes. It's true for me, okay? But I've been doing much better reading books from the library and not having to own them. Partly because I can't afford to buy all the books I want, you know? And that's okay, because I can read them from the library and then I can give them back. Anyway, I'm blabbering. So the book I'm going to talk about today is called Angel of Greenwood. I'm just going to show it to you, by Randy Pink. I actually think this is a beautiful cover. And it is a historical novel. But before I get to the book, I'm just going to say, granted, I'm a lot older than teens, but I never learned about the Tulsa Race Massacre in school. And I don't think many people did until fairly recently, like start with the turn of the millennium. They started to pay a little more attention to it, more TV shows, more movies, more books started being put out that addressed this horrific event in United States history. And really, I only heard about it like a couple of years ago because I kept hearing the phrase Black Wall Street thrown around and I didn't know what it meant. And that is what Greenwood was called. Greenwood was essentially a black town, city, what have you, that was probably considered part of Tulsa, Oklahoma, but it was separated from white Tulsa by a railroad. And so it was essentially its own city, but it was part of the larger Tulsa. But it was, the black city. Everybody who lived there was black. The businesses were all black owned and black run. And it was a thriving place. Yes, white people came to Greenwood to shop. Black people worked in white Tulsa. It wasn't like they were completely separate, but in terms of economies, it was an all-black economy, all black owned. And the neighborhoods were all black and beautiful neighborhoods, and so it was an amazing place. But the Tulsa Race Massacre occurred on May 31st and June 1st, 1921, when essentially the sort of utopia of Greenwood was destroyed. It was historically prompted by an accusation that a black man had either touched or harassed a young white woman in an elevator. And that's what sort of set it off. But in this book, you get the sense that from some of the older folks or the people who have already passed on that, it's great what we have here, but it's not going to last forever. They're going to want it back. They being white folks. So the book is actually framed by its chapter titles, not all of its chapter titles, but many of its chapter titles in relation to the massacre. So I'll just show you when it begins with chapter 1. But it's not named, but so this is the first chapter, and you can't see. And so the chapter is Angel, and that's whose perspective we get but above Angel, it says Thursday, May 19th, 1921, 12 days before. So as you're reading, continually seeing this however many days before. And so there's a sort of angst and anxiety as a reader because you're getting closer and closer to this date and you know this horrific thing is going to happen. But what's really impressive about the book and that is that despite this sort of reminder, right, you or I'm not going to say you, I got completely sucked into the story as it is developing in the real time of the novel. And I would forget, I wouldn't completely forget that it was leading to this horrific massacre, but I became utterly invested in the story as it was developing in real time. And I think to be able to do that, to be able to frame it in such a way, and yet still, and so have that angst, that sense of anxiety that the reader has, that this whole book is technically leading to this event, which is horrible, and yet at the same time to be completely sort of drawn in and invested in the narrative that's taking place in the narrative now. I think that's remarkable and very well done. So I'm going to tell you about sort of what the book's about, other than leading up to this massacre. It has a very clear narrative in place, and it's about these two mostly about these two main characters. Angel and Elijah. And I'm going to give you a little summary of each of the two characters and what they have to do with each other, and how you get to the massacre, where you are in the massacre, what happens in the book. So it begins, well, before I do that, I just want to read something sort of right before the book starts. There's no sort of, prologue or anything like that written, but it says in a different font, "The most powerful of the scribes is the one without fear. It's what I aspire to be." Written by Mary Elizabeth Jones Parrish, fearless author of Events of the Tulsa Disaster, 1922, now out of print. I honor you. So that is Randy Pink's sort of I honor you to this woman who wrote a book about the massacre the year after. And the first line of the book, from Angel's perspective: "Everything was as it should be on the 19th of May in the hopeful year of 1921. Which sort of, it changes the perspective because it puts you back in time without the knowledge that Angel didn't have, right? So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Angel. It begins with her talking to her ailing father about the terms mercy and justice. And it's sort of a bit of a philosophical conversation. And it's definitely, the race is not brought up. Race is a figure in that conversation. And her father is terribly ill. And he senses trouble in the future, just as he senses that he is going to die soon. or knows that he's going to die soon. And what he wishes for more than anything for his beloved daughter is for her to know peace and love, to be able to sit on a front porch with a man who loves her more than he loves himself and just relax. This is a huge wish in 1922, and the only real place, well, I don't know about the only, but one of the few places where such a thing could happen was in Greenwood. A thriving Black community that had sort of freed itself from the countless barriers of oppression that anyone of color would deal with every minute of their lives in most of the United States. And so Angel, she's a good girl. And I know that's sort of like a cheesy thing to say, but she really is she's a good girl. And she thinks that she was put on earth to help people. She spends an enormous amount of time helping her mother with her father, who can't walk by himself, who literally can't do anything by himself anymore. He's so ill. She also spends a ton of time looking after her neighbor's baby boy, who is very colicky and cries a lot and sort of drives that mom crazy. So she'll take him, and she'll calm him down so the mother can get some sleep. And she ends up spending hours and hours and hours every day with him, letting that mother get some peace. She also spends a lot of time with neighbors who are older, maybe lonely, may have lost their spouse, just talking to them and listening to them, and helping them however she can. Sorry, I've written notes on this because I finished this book a while ago, so I had to. She also loves to read, and she's a great student. As such an angel, I mean, she really is an angel in addition to her name being Angel. She doesn't give herself much time to sort of be a teenage girl in ways that we might think are pretty general. The young men at school don't consider her attractive, and I don't know that really many, if many at all, young folks have really gotten to know her. Her life is completely focused on other people. But other than helping people and reading, her passion is dance. And she did perform at the school talent show, but pretty much all the kids didn't understand what she was doing because there actually wasn't any music. There was only one student who understood that dance. But she also dances at church, where the congregants absolutely recognize the holiness of her dance and love it and appreciate it. The one student who recognized and somewhat understood that dance at school was Isaiah. So now I'm going to tell you a little bit about Isaiah, the other main character in the book. So he's a young man. His father has died in the World War. His father, who was a very strong man and taught him a great deal, he's lost his father. And he misses him terribly, 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 because he would always go to him with his questions. He is somewhat secretly a gifted poet who is driven to create. But socially, he's at a turning point in his life. Since childhood, he has had a best friend whose name is Muggy Little Jr., and Muggy Little Jr. is a little jerk. And Isaiah has pretty much been his follower. So Muggy is wealthy. His father is the wealthy town butcher who no one in the community actually respects because he's a cheat. He's a cheat in business and he's a cheat in his marriage. He's a terrible cheat in his marriage. He has a wonderful wife he does not appreciate. And he's a bad husband and he's a bad father. And really no one in town respects him. But he runs around thinking he's, best thing since sliced bread, and he takes off and has affairs. Somewhat maybe because of this, Muggy is a cruel and conniving kid. He basically is a troublemaker who mocks and engages in acts of cruelty against weaker people, whether that be adults or other kids. And Isaiah just kind of follows him around and does it with him. And though he has some strong feelings about this, he really doesn't like it. He doesn't have a sense of himself sort of outside of that relationship, and he's trying to figure that out. He definitely doesn't like Muggy, even though Muggy is his best friend. But every day he waits to walk to school with Muggy, he spends all his time with Muggy, and he's just a follower of Muggy. And he feels guilty and he feels cowardly for exactly that. He's been sort of playing a role and yet not knowing who he is outside of that role. He knows that he is playing a role. He knows that that is not who he is, but he doesn't know who he is if you take away that role. He's not a very good son to his mother. He doesn't take responsibility for things he should take responsibility for, but he knows these things are wrong. But he still is sort of figuring that out. He is a very smart guy. He gets top grades and dreams of attending a top HBCU. In every free moment, basically, when Muggy's not there, he's writing in this journal that is most prized possession, most of it poetry. And it sort of calls to him. If he's sitting alone in his room, he can't just sit there. Like, you'll have to write. It's this drive. And he had seen her at the talent show. And when he describes seeing her, he describes really seeing her without all of the distraction of everything in the everyday world that prevents you from seeing the real other person. And he goes to church with his mother. He goes to actually the Bible study that is before the church service. He doesn't really want to go, to be honest. He's not really that interested, but he does it because his mother asks him, and he's terribly bored. He's terribly bored. And then Angel comes out and dances. And he has the same experience of seeing the real her. And he falls in love with her. And he starts writing poetry he doesn't really understand that he's in love with her, but the poetry he writes clearly reflects that as he learns from his teacher. Well, I'll get to that in just a second. So even though they're growing up in Greenwood at the same time, at the same school, et cetera, they don't really know each other, Isaiah and Angel. Angel is sort of warned off spending time with Isaiah because he's always with Muggy, and they're considered bad news. Even if Isaiah did want to spend time with Angel, which he secretly sort of does, Muggy basically just makes fun of her and has been cruel to her and would never allow him to do that, in a sense. And thus, that's the only way that they know of each other. But they are brought together. So they go to the same high school, Booker T. Washington High School, and they share the school's brilliant English teacher, who's the only person that knows about Isaiah being a poet, and also knows about how much Angel loves to read. And so she is actually the person who brings them together when she hires them both to fix up and then use this sort of tricycle mobile library. Over the summer, she's going to pay them to ride this mobile library tricycle down to the poorer parts of Greenwood to introduce the young people there to literature and the love of literature. And so first, the summer starts and they have to meet to, first of all, the tricycle she has is just in horrible shape. So they have to get people in the community to help them fix it up, and they're fixing it up, and they end up, and she's like, go into my library, each of you pick out 5 books that you definitely want to take. And so they go in, they start talking about their favorite books, and they're fixing up the bike together, and they're sort of debating W.B. Du Bois versus Booker T. Washington, because Isaiah is completely obsessed with W.B. Du Bois and writes off Booker T. Washington, and Angel is committed to Booker T. Washington. And there's a whole philosophical disagreement there, which you can learn about. You can learn about the Black history of their disagreement, their philosophical disagreements in this book, because they argue back and forth. And what's also interesting is that through these conversations that they're having, they're learning not only about things that the other knows more about, but they're also learning more about themselves. And there's a complexity involved in what those authors wrote and how each of them sort of enriches the knowledge of the other. And it's sort of through this that they really fall in love. And I fell in love with them. I fell in love with these characters. Also, through this, Isaiah is able to assert himself, sort of gets rid of, well, there's more to it, but he gets rid of Muggy as his friend, devotes himself to Angel, and devotes himself to being a better man. And the writing is it's delightful, it's evocative, it sort of draws you in, and you fall in love not only with these 2 characters, but with all of the characters you meet in Greenwood. And there are a number that you meet who are all impressive, and there are stories behind their stories that eventually you will find out. And it's just, it's a great reading experience. And at the same time, you're getting closer and you're getting closer and you're getting closer until we live with them, through them, the experience of the massacre. And it is horrifying and traumatic. And both of them act with heroism, but also have to make extremely difficult decisions. Muggy shows another side of himself. It's a terrifying experience for all of them. And the members of the town that emerge and that end up seeking safety sort of elsewhere, work together in ways that are stunning and hopeful. And Isaiah sort of becomes a leader. An orator, sort of. And they're both heroes in a way that is beyond what anyone could expect of them, right? So it's not, you might think that sort of leading up to this experience, it's awkward in any way, but it's not. It's sort of, it's coming. I was dreading it. And yet it's beautifully written even throughout it. I mean, you have a sense of fear and terror and trauma. Trying to wake, I mean, it's the middle of the night, trying to get people awake and out of their houses before they burn to death. I mean, it's a very intense experience. But it's beautifully wrought. And, I want to just make sure that I'm saying this is historical fiction. It is a novel. But Randy Pink did do as much research as she could do to make sure that the story is reflective of the true history of Greenwood. And I think that it's a beautiful novel, historical novel, because it enlightens a lot of an important part of history that I never learned about in school. I learned about much later. And it does so. I'm a big believer that reading creates and cultivates empathy for readers. And this book is a profound example of that. I wanted to know these characters. I wanted to know them in my life. I felt connected to them, even though we're about as different as you could be. And it's a beautiful book. And I cannot recommend it more highly. So let me just put it up there again. Angel of Greenwood by Randy Pink. And we don't have it yet, but it is on order. So we will have it. And I cannot recommend it more highly. Just so you know, I don't give book talks on like every book I read or every book I start to read. There are books I start to read and I'm like, I don't like this book. And sometimes I make myself finish it. And sometimes I think, why am I making myself finish it? I'm not enjoying this, and I don't. But I don't give book talks on books I don't like. You may have noticed that. Just so you know, I'm not just like book talking every book I read. And like pretending that they're all great. I only book talk books that I'm actually into. So there are other books that I'll read thinking, oh, maybe I could book talk this. And then I read it and I'm just like, I'm not so like, And I don't want to share it with you because I don't think it's worth sharing. So yeah, couple of things. There will be, not tomorrow, but a week from tomorrow, we're going to have another outdoor program for teens, drawing and games and just having fun in the courtyard of Rawlings. We'll have chairs set up. We'll have drawing paper. And if some people show up to take part, we can order some food too. I did have one last Friday, but nobody came. That's okay. I know you guys are busy. I know you're very busy. But, I would love to see some people come out. And I'm trying to think of some more outdoor programs that, that we could put on that would be fun and that would, create some laughter, some silliness. But because we don't have a ton of space, it's hard to come up with things where you can social distance, honestly. If anybody has ideas, please email me. you can find me on the website. And other than that, I want to tell you that we miss you and that we are looking forward to the day when we can have indoor programming again. And you all can come in and we can get to know each other and have some fun and do some cool programs. I also want you to know that we miss you and we're worried. I'm worried about pretty much everyone because this pandemic has been really hard on everybody, hard on mental health. And I want to make sure that the teens of Puebla are well and they're trying to remain well. And if they're not well, then that they're getting help. There's no shame in not being well. I got this question on some survey. Do you think it's okay not to be okay? And I thought it was such a weird question. Of course it's okay not to be okay. Who is okay all the time? No one. And sometimes you're really, really not okay. I have been really, really not okay in my life. And I've gotten help for it. And there's no reason you shouldn't. If you get really, really sick, you go get help. I'm not talking about COVID. I'm talking about just getting sick. You get help because you're sick or because you break a bone. You go get help. The same is true for mental health. When your mental health is suffering, you get help. It only makes sense. I've got the crisis line running here. Also, talk to an adult you trust. Ask them to help you get some help. And, love your friends, love your family, make sure they're doing okay. When you ask them how their day was and they say it was fine, maybe ask them, no, really, how was your day? What happened? How did it go? And listen. Because just that amount of conversation will, I hope, make people feel a little less isolated, as we are. We are isolated. And it's hard. But do what you can for your friends and family, the people you love. Make sure they don't feel alone. If you feel alone, reach out to somebody and tell them, I'm feeling alone. I want to talk. Even if it's just, I want to talk to you about how I'm feeling. Or, if it's worse, I need to talk to a professional. I'm worried about how I'm feeling. Okay? Make it pinky swear. Sorry. Weird voice. But take care of yourselves, okay? All right. I'll see you next week. I hope you have a great weekend. And your weekend's already started. I'm jealous. Okay, but have a great weekend. Enjoy the beautiful weather. Take care of yourselves. I'll see you when I see you. Okay, bye-bye.